Really excited to be here today with Sony Singh. She's an amazing writer over in the Writing Gym, and she's going to share a little bit about her journey as a writer. So welcome, Sony.
Thank you for having me.
So let's give our listeners and watchers some context. Tell us what you're writing.
So I'm writing a contemporary women's fiction novel that is about a woman who starts getting visions and tries to make sense of them.
That's great. And you and I met a couple of months ago. Tell us about where you were as far as your writing was concerned when you and I met.
So I started writing this novel about 2 years ago, more or less. And at the time that I started writing it, I was doing it sort of more to try and see if I had it in me to write. So the first version that I completed, I sort of just kind of went for it. And then I had started attending either writers' courses, seeing where I could get guidance from on how to properly write a novel, and so would go back and forth and try to fix what I'd already created. But what I really felt was missing at the time that you and I had our first conversation was how does all of these things that I'm learning, which were great concepts, apply to me, which I felt was really what I was missing, because you can have people explain to you, how to use dialogue or how to effectively show, not tell, but it's very different to then apply that to your own writing. And so where we started working together was at that point where I thought, I've learned these things, but I really just don't have the capacity or the understanding to apply it to myself.
Gotcha. And how did your writing life feel at that point?
Very haphazard. I was scattered. I knew that the writing needed to be improved. I knew that I needed to make changes. I just really didn't have any clarity as to what changes I needed to make or how to improve it. So I would say, and it was haphazard also because I didn't really have a consistency in working with the novel. I would sort of take it up whenever I had the time.
Got it. And so let's fast forward for the listeners. Where are you now today as far as, haphazard and not having clarity? What does your writing look like today?
It is completely different. The irony is that we've gotten to a stage where I haven't yet even started rewriting, like physically rewriting the book, but I have more clarity about the book than I've ever had before. I know the areas, or have identified the areas, that need improvement. I know that there are questions that I still need to clarify, but I know that those questions have a purpose. It's not, a very vague, like, how do I do this? It's a very specific, there's a gap here and I need to figure out how to fill this gap. So it's more purposeful. I also, in the work that we've done together, have now created a schedule for my writing. So it's not haphazard. It's not just sort of whenever I feel like it. I've got a schedule in place where I've made writing a priority, and even if it's not physically working on writing, it's still working on the book or doing reading that helps support the book or that helps improve my understanding or my knowledge of what I need to do for my book.
That's amazing. So it sounds like you went from a place that felt haphazard to a place of feeling purpose and clarity, but also from a place of writing here, there, and everywhere to being on a regular schedule.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is.
How did that happen, Sony? What was it about the Writing Gym that got you from haphazard and writing here and there to clarity, purpose, and a regular writing schedule?
Well, I feel like the way that you've set things up, and on top of that, the support people that you have with you that are all part of the program, really lent itself for that. And it was immediate. It wasn't, sort of, here's the program and let's sort of ease you into it. It was, here's the program, here's what you have to do. These are the instructional videos that you have to watch. Let's start speaking on a one-on-one basis multiple times a week. Let's start meeting with the other people in the writing gym also multiple times a week. And so I felt like it immediately lent myself into feeling supported and also being guided to have that direction. So, the first couple months were the reading period where I was meant to be reading, but it wasn't just sort of haphazard me reading whatever. There was a workbook associated with it, questions that I had to think about for every book. So I felt, and I think I might have mentioned this to you at some previous conversation, like I'd gone back to school. And so, I had like the follow-ups, and then I'd speak with you on a weekly basis and speak with Gretchen on a weekly basis. And so it's different. It's allowed me to sort of fall into a framework, and that eased creating my own framework.
That's really powerful. And you talked earlier about the application of, things you learn at conferences, workshops, classes about, dialogue or whatever, the elements of quality storytelling and writing. How has your experience in the writing gym been different, been able to get you different results or given you resources that just were different from what you did before that allowed you to have that application?
Well, for instance, even when going through some of the videos, you've provided us with a workbook that says how would this apply to your story, and keep a kind of a list of things to consider. And so that really helped reflect back onto my own writing, but also because we were watching videos at the same time as we're reading other writing, there was a connection, like there was a way to connect, seeing something specific, watching a video, and then looking at my own writing. Also, I think a lot of the bonus kind of salons or sessions that you provide have an immediate application, because we all come together to write following a writing prompt, and a lot of the things that kind of are mulling in your head are able to come out during that time. So there's also an opportunity to exercise, I guess, whatever it is that you're learning.
So we keep talking about the writing gym. I know what that is. You know what that is. Fill in the listeners on your perspective of what the writing gym is. If they're like, what is this thing they're talking about over there?
Well, I would say the writing gym is a supportive community of writers who are all working to finish or complete their novel. And so we, the group of us that are part of the writing gym, we learn how to be better writers, but we also support each other in the journey, and learn from each other, because everybody, I feel, is writing in a completely different genre, or even if you're not, the stories are different enough that coming together is still, I feel, very instructional. Like I've learned so much just from hearing other people's stories or reading, listening to what they've written. So yeah, I would say the writing gym is a supportive community to help get your manuscript out to the world.
That's awesome. And, maybe some people who are listening might be thinking, well, okay, she mentioned it's like school. She mentioned that she learned a lot. Well, so what? How does that help you to actually publish a novel? What would you say in response to that kind of idea?
I would say it's the difference between just putting your words out there to get them published versus putting the best version of what you can produce out there. Because before joining the writing gym, I had a completed draft of the book, I could have tried to get it out there. I could have tried to even, I don't know, self-publish or whatever it is. But I knew it wasn't my best work. I just didn't know how to get the best work out of me. And I would say this is what helps you get there.
That's amazing. And we have, we're celebrating with you today, Sony, that you have so much more clarity on your novel, which is just amazing. I've really enjoyed the last couple of weeks, the revision work that we've done, really digging deeply into your protagonist. And we've had amazing conversations, and there have been a lot of light bulb moments for you. And so that's been really huge. And I absolutely want to celebrate that. But as part of the culture of the writing gym, we do a lot of celebrating. You've had a lot of victories. What are some of the highlights that we can celebrate with you of things that have happened for you along your journey in the short time that you've been with us in the writing gym?
I would say that I've gone from sort of writing off the cuff and semi-understanding my characters to really getting to know them more deeply, because I consider who they are, what their journey is, how they're growing, particularly my protagonist, and also having clarity as to like how to build up a story. Because I knew that it had to start with, for instance, the character in one place and end with her in another place, but I wasn't really sure either where she was going to end up or how she was going to get there. And, I had sort of like in writing what the draft that I had, it was really like just instinctual off the cuff. And now I feel like I can see a progression that I had not been able to see before. I can tie themes in together that I didn't even know I had in the book. I mean, I did, but I didn't really. And also, even if I had themes like culture or food or family, there were gaps. And now I can see that those gaps need to be filled. So to me, that's like, I've not had such a clear purpose for my book until now.
That is amazing. That's such a great celebration for you. And I'm so happy to be able to celebrate that with you. As an author myself, I know the weight that is lifted off of my shoulders when I get to that point in my plot. So I can imagine you have a similar type of feeling.
Absolutely. It's gone in a way, and hearing you say the words, the weight lifted off, your shoulders, I hadn't realized until you said that it's gone from being almost a burden, although burden perhaps is the wrong word, to being a joy. Like I look forward to the exercises. I look forward to, looking at the plot or, the rewriting process. Whereas before it had gotten to a point of like, oh, I'm not gonna get there. So that's been huge.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, it feels like I stopped dragging my novel and we're walking together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's awesome. And, so I met you I taught an online class in somebody else's writing workshop, and you decided to get on a call with me. I don't think that you knew much about me at that point, other than the class that I taught. And you joined the writing gym right after I had invited you in, right there.
Yes.
Which is wonderful, but maybe there was some trepidation there, right? You didn't really know me. But what would you say to your past self about that decision, as far as, this seemed like a good idea, but now I know it's a good idea? Is there a reflection there to your past self?
I would say to not have hesitated, because as you said, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I didn't know how this was going to go. And, even I still remember that initial conversation when you were talking about the reading period and the revision period. And I'm sitting there like, I don't even know what that means. But okay, sure, well, I'll go with it. But it was that sort of like, because it's fear, like it's an investment in you, and it's an investment in something that is important to you. And sometimes you feel like, should I not? Is this really going to be worth my while? Is this a worthwhile investment? And so if I had to reflect back, I would say, yes, do it without hesitation.
That's great. Let's talk a little bit about that investment in yourself, because, there's some fear there. And, now, because you're on the inside of the writing gym, that we talk a whole lot about fears and facing your fears and really, dancing with your fear, not overcoming your fear, but dancing with your fear. And the idea that you're making an investment in yourself can feel scary in a lot of ways. Are you willing to share what that was like for you?
Absolutely. I mean, it's scary also because it's almost like you're taking that step to say, my writing matters to me,
Hmm.
and it matters over other things that may also be important. And it is a financial investment, and that I think is very daunting, because you're sitting there saying, well, it's investment of my time, it's investment of my money, it's investment of, like, I'm now dedicated to something that is, you know, important to me, and it's scary to actually admit that to yourself.
Mm.
So I, but it was also like having to confront yourself to say, is this really what you want to do? Or how important is this really for you? And for me, the answer was, it is extremely important. And yes, this is a priority, and it's something that I really want. I would say that one of the other things that really drew me into the program was this whole concept of, and you had mentioned this in that talk that you did, the concept of fear. Like, a lot of the process of a writer is not just the technique, it's also your self-talk, what's happening with you on an emotional level. And the fact that that is addressed, I think, is one of the biggest differentiators, because there is an open conversation of, what are you doing to support yourself as a writer, or like your goals to be a writer, and talking about vulnerability and fear, and all those things do come up as part of the program. And people share. I mean, the rest of the people, the rest of the gym rats in the writing gym, everybody shares in it. And I think that's also what helps build a community, but it's what motivates us, I think, to keep going, and to really support one another.
That's a wonderful celebration. And I just want to take a moment to applaud your embracing that experience and being open to talking about the fear, dancing with the fear, and acknowledging that there is fear, the fear of vulnerability that you mentioned, the fear of, do my words matter? Does my story matter? Who am I to tell this story? Those are things that come up for writers all of the time. And you're really dancing with those, and that's a wonderful place for you to be, Sony. I want to notice that and applaud that for you.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, I think it's also because the environment has been conducive to that, and all the other people who are in the program are at different levels of writing. Some have already published books, some have not, some are perhaps not even finished with their first draft. And the fact that we can all come together and know that this is kind of a joint experience is beautiful, because it also gives you the motivation to see somebody who is farther along with you in the process, that you too will get there, and then to receive that support back has been wonderful.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that about the writing gym community. And thank you for sharing your experience. And I think I know the answer to this question, but I'd love to hear your perspective on it. If there's somebody out there listening and they're thinking, gee, should I get on the call? That might be scary. Am I ready to do this? Is this writing gym really going to solve my problems? What would you say to that person out there?
I would say absolutely, especially if you are looking for guidance that is personalized, if you're looking for one-on-one attention, if you're looking also to learn more about the craft of writing and to have a community of people that is supportive, open, welcoming, then yes, absolutely get on that call, and learn more about what this program is about.
That's wonderful. Sony, thank you for taking the time and for allowing us to celebrate with you. You're doing amazing work.